Hi, I'm Perry, and you're listening to The Beauty Brains. Welcome to The Beauty Brains, a show where real cosmetic chemists answer your beauty product questions and give you an insider's look at the cosmetic industry. This is episode 384, our first one for the new year. I'm your host, Perry Romanowski, and with me today is Valerie George. Hello, Valerie.
Hi, Perry.
Valerie, we've already got a ton of questions, and those are we're going to cover them on today's show, including, is it okay to use self-tanner under your eyes and on your lips? Are PFAS the ingredient that causes products to self-foam? How can silicone protect hair to temperatures up to 450 degrees? Are certain types of products worth getting the more expensive version? And what is the chemistry of nanoplasty? But first, chit-chat. Valerie, it's a whole new year. Did you ring in the new year very crazily?
I did. It was called sleeping. I didn't even make it until midnight. I said, I'm so tired. The new year's going to happen with or without me. And so I went to bed probably around 9:30.
Wow. And it turned out the new year did happen, huh?
It did. It's pretty crazy. And I got a great night of sleep. What about you? How was your party?
Well, first of all, did you get the pizza rolls, the Totinos, or those?
I did, and I told Mr. Cosmetic Chemist about our conversation, and as he was preparing them for me, he said, you know what, they have changed. And unfortunately, he bought a 100-pack, which is, it's just way too many pizza rolls. So, I've had my pizza roll fill for the year, and I probably won't have any until next New Year's.
I guess you could save the ones you got till next year. Just freeze them, right? They're well preserved.
Exactly.
Well, we had a little gathering at my place, and we had a good number of people that came over. But most importantly, we had the scissors, paper, rock tournament.
Okay, or known as rock, paper, scissors in other parts of the world. Right. How did it go?
Well, it was a big hit. We had brackets, we had seating, and it came down to the big finale. I finished in the top 4, but I kind of got a bye the first round. People objected to that, but it's just the number of people.
Well, I think people figured out your tactics. You got out-rocked.
I think I got out. I definitely got out-rocked because I threw paper too much, or I threw scissors too much. That's what happened.
Oh my God! Yeah, scissors is it's not a popular one. I feel like most people do rock or paper.
That is true. Now I did add a little something. The tournament wasn't just for the pride of winning. The tournament also featured the winner got a chance to win $250,000.
Okay.
Because I went to got a scratch lottery, and it says on the front you can win $250,000.
Oh my God. That is such a dupe.
What? No.
Do you see my response? Right. I was trying to think how would Perry have pulled this off?
It says it right on the thing. Win up to $250,000. And so if I happen to buy the scratch lotto ticket that you won $250,000, you would.
All right. Did the person do the scratchy in front of you guys?
They did, and they won $10. So
wow.
Not quite $250,000 promised, but it reminds me of those things where they say, "Oh, you can you get a hole in one, you win a car." Nobody ever wins a car, right?
Well,
there's that excitement.
There is. I think it just depends how lucky you are. I used to have someone who worked in regulatory for me, and they were just a really lucky person, and they were always winning cruises and TVs. And one time he was walking out of a casino and he had entered in a drawing, and he won $5,000. They called his name over the loudspeaker. Yeah. And I just don't have that kind of luck. My papa sends me scratchies all the time.
Yeah.
I'm his scratching buddy. And, he always wins. I never win. I'm just not lucky like that.
Well, that is true. We used to do scratches in the lab. We would pool our money together. Everyone would put $1 in the lab, and we would all scratch. And we would always win enough money to buy new lottery tickets the next week, but it was a whole group bonding thing for our lab.
I think that's really fun. That's way better than when like Powerball's going to hit and everyone in the company's buying tickets. It's like, there's no way we're going to even win. And even if people won like $25, where does that money go? You know, are they going to distribute it back to the employees? Yeah, right.
Right. It's a terrible idea for a company anyway, because everybody hits it and then they want to quit their jobs.
Yeah. Anyone who says if they would win like $100 million, they're not going to quit their job, I just think they're making a big mistake.
Well, they're deluding themselves. So.
I'm not saying you don't have to work. I'm just saying like you could be a philanthropist. You could, you know, spend your time volunteering. You don't have to work and be stressed out. Life's too short.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, give the job to somebody who needs a job.
Exactly.
Don't take somebody's job like that. All right, let's move on to some of the news. Well, Valerie, I saw that the FDA has proposed some new testing for talc-containing products. If you recall, Johnson & Johnson has been in the news about talc, and essentially they stopped using talc, at least in the U.S., in their baby powder products. And talc is still used a fair amount in, you know, powdered makeup as an extender. But it turns out that but before this, the U.S. FDA didn't have an established testing method for determining whether the source of talc had asbestos in it. You see, talc and asbestos in nature, they kind of occur together. It's a mined ingredient. It occurred together. And so most sources that are used for cosmetics, that you filter out the asbestos. So it's safe. However, there wasn't a standardized testing for that. And so now the FDA has created this standardized testing rule. So any talc that is going to be used in cosmetics is going to have gone through this testing. So the entire industry uses the same test. So this standardization should, in theory, make the talc supply safer. Although I suppose talc has already become such a scary ingredient that most companies are going to avoid it anyway.
And it's also becoming restricted in the EU. So basically what happened, Perry, is, and by the way, this information came to me from an industry legend, David Steinberg.
Yeah.
He told me that basically the asbestos issue in talc had been a problem in quite a bit of time. And he said in the early 70s, and by the way, he was around in the early 70s, so he knows this information, whereas I was not around in the 70s. So, or even you weren't working in the industry in the 70s, right? So,
no, but I was watching the Brady Bunch.
And they weren't talking about asbestos and talc.
They were not.
But he said by the early 70s, a paper was published that the amount of asbestos in talc can be problematic. And so in the 70s, the FDA requested better methods to determine levels in asbestos. And in the 80s, essentially, they adopted a method that they found to be pretty good at the time. One company said, hey, this method really works. And the FDA said this method is really great.
Yeah.
And that's the method that was used for a long time. But it wasn't really a super great method because technology has advanced. But the test methods, you know, in terms of what the FDA said this is acceptable, didn't go with it. And so
the FDA moves kind of slowly when it comes to changing any kind of rules.
And they work, and I don't even think it was a rule per se, but I think, you know, they work on the hottest issues. And for a while, it wasn't an issue, right? And so I think it's appropriate to go back and review stuff. So I don't have a problem with what the FDA did or how long they took.
Yeah.
But now with MOCRA and talc being such a hot issue with all the lawsuits going on, they said, you know what, we should update this method, and that's what they did.
Yeah, and so if people use talc in cosmetics, you can be assured it's going to be even more likely not to have asbestos than before, since we have this new testing.
Well, that's great news. There was one other article. You sure got a kick out of this. Walmart won't hit its emission goals by 2030.
Come on, get out of here. What?
Isn't it crazy that they can't meet a climate goal 5 years from now?
Right. Well, and they already know that they're not. But I guess they're not on track. So what was their goal? I mean, they were going to lead the world in saving us from climate change.
Oh, gosh. I think what they did is they made too big of a pledge. They basically said they'd cut greenhouse gas emissions by 35% in 2025.
Oh, that's
and
this year, huh?
by 65% in 2030, and it's not even on track to deliver either promise.
Oh, okay. So they're not going to be cut by 35% in 2025, and they're definitely not going to hit the 2030. I think they said they wanted to get to zero by 2040, which I guess they could get there if they went bankrupt and closed up shop, right?
Well, the challenge is I'm like, okay, well, how close are they? They actually didn't even reduce their emissions. Their emissions rose
what?
by 3.9% in 2023, according to a report published in Financial Times. And I think this is proof that you can't grow your business and grow your sales and simultaneously reduce your emissions. It's very difficult to do. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm saying it's improbable.
Well, and you've got all these companies making all these long-term promises, mostly for, I would say, probably the marketing angle. They're like, oh, look, we care about the environment, so feel free to shop with us. When maybe they don't even really have a plan or an intention of doing anything about it. I mean, if they were trying to cut by 35% and they're up by 3.9%, they're not trying very hard.
It's an uphill battle, that's for sure.
Well, I think this also shows that you can't take companies seriously when they're saying these things, and the only way this stuff is going to happen is if it's a government mandate. Like if the government said, oh, you have to cut by 35%, well, then they'll do it. But if the company is just saying, oh, we'll do this ourselves, they're like, you probably won't do it because it's going to cost money.
And when the shareholders look at sales maybe being flat, small increase, and then they look at the bottom line and the lack of profitability or lower profitability, that kind of stuff is the first thing to go out the window.
Yeah, it is, unfortunately. So sorry, kids, in the future, it was Walmart's fault that the climate didn't get fixed. I thought of this game. We talk a lot about celebrity beauty products.
Yeah.
And when we were going through last time when we were predicting who our celebrity was going to launch a line, I had to look up like which celebrities already had lines. And so I thought it'd be a fun, quick game here. I'm going to name 5 celebrities, 5 males, 5 females, and you're going to have to tell me which one does not have their own line.
Okay.
So
sounds fun.
Let's see how we do. We'll start with the women. All right, I'm going to give you 5 names. You tell me which one doesn't have their own line.
Okay.
Lady Gaga, Anne Hathaway, Jessica Simpson,
Okay.
Ariana Grande, and Miranda Kerr.
Now, these are cosmetics lines, correct?
I'd say a beauty product line or personal care line.
Okay, okay. I don't believe Anne Hathaway has a line.
And you are correct. She does not have a
Oh! Well, I knew Lady Gaga had House Beauty distributed through Amazon when she initially launched it. Yep. And Miranda Kerr, I feel like, has kind of like it's called, I don't remember what it's.
Cora Organics.
That's right. I remember, I saw the product in my brain. And I wasn't sure
Ariana
about.
Grande has?
I don't know. I thought it was a perfume.
She has REM Beauty.
Oh, that's her. That's right. That is hers. Okay. And what was?
Yeah, Jessica Simpson was the other one. You know what her line is? Jessica Simpson Beauty.
I didn't know that. I knew she had the clothing line at some point in time, but.
She has a beauty line. All right. How about this one? We're going to do male celebrities.
All right.
I'm going to give you 5 names. One of them does not have a line.
Okay.
The other ones do. All right. Harry Styles, Pharrell Williams, Jason Momoa, Jared Leto, or John Legend.
Ooh, it's down to Jason Momoa or Jared Leto. And I feel like Jared did come out with one, but I also feel like Jason Momoa came out with one. So I'm really torn. I'm going to say Jason Momoa.
And you are correct. He does not have a line.
But he should. That should have been my celebrity pick for 2025.
Maybe he will. So Harry Styles has a brand called Pleasing. It's a gender-neutral aesthetics.
Yep.
Pharrell Williams has one called Human Race.
Yep.
skincare line. Jared Leto has one called 29 Palms.
That's right. I couldn't remember if that was him or Leonardo DiCaprio for some reason in my brain, or I'm sorry, Jake Gyllenhaal. But I'm so glad I saw the picture in my brain.
Sure, you had it. And John Legend has his Loved 01. So there you go. Maybe we'll look. Maybe Jason. Now you call him Jason Momoa, isn't it? MoMA?
I have no idea.
the Aquaman guy. Yeah. All right.
I don't really know what his name is, but I just know that he's a celebrity crush for a lot of women.
And he does not yet have a beauty line. All right. How about we move on to our question? All right, our first question comes from Sean, who is a patron. And incidentally, if you appreciate that we don't have any ads and we can say whatever we want about brands, that's only because we're supported by patrons. So if you want to support the show and keep us ad-free, go to patreon.com/thebeautybrains and subscribe at any level. All right, here's Sean's question. He says, "Hi, Perry and Valerie. It's been a while. I have a question about products that might contain PFAS, PFAS. I was told some time ago that any self-fizzing product that bubbles or foams when applied to the skin are PFAS ingredients such as methyl perfluorobutyl ether. The FDA has labeled this material as a PFAS. Could you clarify this? Thank you." All right, PFAS, the perfluoroalkyl ether substances, huh?
Yeah, perfluorinated alkyl substances. So basically, if you aren't sure what PFAS are, maybe you've heard it in the news, you don't know what it is, and maybe you've never heard of it. They are basically in the news and very hot in state legislation against cosmetics because these are a class of chemical compounds that are considered forever chemicals. They don't break down, they persist in the environment pretty much forever. And
yeah, I mean, that's how they're advertised, yeah, but nothing lasts forever.
It's the newest thing that people are very concerned about. So
yes.
When we think about the legal definition of a perfluorinated alkyl substance, it essentially means the legal definition in state legislation. It has to be a molecule with at least one fully fluorinated carbon atom. Carbons can have how many atoms attached to it, Perry?
It can have 4 atoms attached to it.
Exactly. And aside from carbon being connected to other carbons, if there is a carbon in a molecule that has fluorine available in all of its other open spots, it would be considered a PFAS. And in looking at the structure of methyl perfluorobutyl ether, which is a chemical that's commonly used in these self-activating masks, it would meet the legal criteria for PFAS because when you look at the carbon atoms, they are fully saturated with fluorine molecules.
Right.
So yes, they are a PFAS.
So what happens with that one is, so you just have a carbon and it's surrounded by 4 fluorines.
Or 3 if it's attached to another carbon.
Right. And so what happens is that it evaporates off, and as it evaporates, it creates the bubbles with the surfactant that's also in the mask.
Exactly. This is a molecule that's advertised to be very fast evaporating. And so actually to get it to foam, it has to interact with atmospheric oxygen to be volatilized into the air. And it also has to have surfactants present because as the chemical, the methyl perfluorobutyl ether moves through the product into the air, it passes through these surfactants and creates that foaming effect.
Right. Now, I will say that when I first saw this question, I thought, I've never made a product that self-foams that uses a PFAS because we would always use, maybe a mix of citric acid and a bicarbonate or something like that. And you can get foaming that way. Or you could use even a propellant where you have a gel with propellant in it, it foams up. So it doesn't, just because it's self-foaming doesn't mean it has a PFAS in it, but some of them do.
Yeah, it has to be either this combination reaction, like Perry said, where at time of use you can combine sodium bicarbonate and citric acid, or it's a special actuator package. But if you're talking about like a little mask or a cream in a jar, and you just put it on your skin and it takes a couple minutes to foam up, it's probably using a perfluorinated material, and those meet the legal criteria for a PFAS. It's also important to note, just because a molecule has the word fluoro in it or a chemical has a fluorine molecule present, that doesn't necessarily make it a PFAS. It has to be fully fluorinated carbons we're talking about. And so unfortunately, that means these fun K-Beauty self-bubbling masks aren't really great for the environment if PFAS indeed aren't great for the environment. And so I probably would look for a product with these other technologies. Is there any benefit to using a self-fizzing mask on your skin? No. They're fun to use. It's a novelty. So I would say they're, probably a pass.
This technology reminds me of microbeads, because microbeads were put in facial cleansers as exfoliators, but it was really, to me, just more of a gimmick, because it feels like it's doing something, but doesn't really have much impact. But it has a big impact on the environment. But getting rid of them or avoiding things like this is not a big deal. Now, I would say that PFAS, there's no health or safety problem that has been identified. So they're safe to put on your skin. It's just for the environment. They build up in the environment, and there's concern there.
Exactly. Well, our next question comes to us from another patron, Eliza. Hi, question for you. I keep seeing TikTok creators put self-tanner around their lips and eyes for long-lasting contour. This isn't safe, right? It would be life-changing for me if it was. Yay, never doing makeup again, but I just can't imagine it's safe to get that stuff in your eyes or mouth. Thanks in advance, Eliza from El Paso.
So Tia is thanks in advance. I did not know that, because it says Tia, and I'm like, oh, is she somebody's Spanish aunt or something?
Thank goodness I'm on the show to help you out.
Well, thank you. Well, I like this question because, I just like DHA. It's one of the only places where you can actually see chemistry happening when you're working in cosmetics.
Most products should not react in the jar or on your skin, and this is one of them that should.
Right. Because, you think you're a chemist. When you're a chemist, you mix stuff together and you want to see chemical reactions happening. But when you become a cosmetic chemist, you just mix stuff together and you hope nothing happens, because when reactions happen, that's usually bad.
Exactly, with the exception of self-tanners, hair color, and perms.
And relaxers, yeah. So there are a few, but mostly not. Okay, let's talk about DHA. You are correct to be concerned, because while DHA is approved for external skin use, it's not really recommended for use near sensitive areas like the eyes, the lips, or any other mucous membranes. So, in fact, when you go get professionally spray tan, you cover your eyes. And do you put something over your mouth? No.
I think you close your mouth, but also I think your vagina has to be protected as well, because that's also a mucous membrane.
So, these skin regions they're a bit thinner, and they're more prone to irritation and, accidental exposure, etc. And so they could actually cause harm. Applying self-tanner near the mouth or the nose, it could mean you inhale DHA, and you're not really supposed to inhale DHA.
I think this is more problematic if you're using the aerosolized self-tanning products. But if you have a little cream and you're kind of self-rubbing it, probably not too big of a deal.
I just think if you put it under your little mustache area and you're sniffing it in all day, but actually most of it's going to react anyway, so that's probably a low probability thing. So it's probably not that much of a concern. Anyway, the FDA does advise against using self-tanners around those areas unless the product specifically says you can use it there. So who would say that?
Yeah, I think it's a big health risk, right? And there's a reason warnings are on packages. And of course, it's on TikTok, people are doing all these hacks, oh wow, why didn't anyone think of this? And it's it's just kind of like the Darwin Awards, right? You know, and then they'll sue the tanning company because they lost their eyesight.
Right. It's people did think of that and they discovered it's a bad idea. we don't advertise every bad idea, right?
Exactly.
Could you think of any safer or more practical things for the solution to this?
Oh, geez. Well, I think, when it comes to contouring, there's obviously makeup, right? You could do daily looks. They sit topically on the surface of skin. They're not permanent. So when you wash your face at night or go to bed, it does rub off and you lose the look. If you were looking for something more permanent, you can do, I think there's some microblading or some more permanent tattoo type techniques, but I think those always look so obvious and fake. And then if you don't want that look anymore,
Right,
It's
right.
impossible
So,
to remove.
unfortunately, there's not really a good substitute.
Unless you just want to take the risk.
There is always that, but you did not get that advice from us.
No, I'm risk adverse. Don't do it.
All right, our next question comes to us from Janie. She says, "Hi, Beauty Brains. I have two questions about two new serums I've been loving." It's always nice when people love their products,
Aw.
right? Yeah. It's the Olaplex Bonding Oil and the Garnier Moroccan Sleek Smoothing Oil. I love both of these products so much, but the first question. The Olaplex says that its heat protection is up to 450 degrees Fahrenheit, which is so hard to believe. I think it's the dimethicone that has the quality, but I can't wrap my head around how is this physically possible. Valerie, you are the heat protecting queen in the industry. How does that work?
Well, silicones like dimethicone, and in the case of the Olaplex product, probably more so the phenyl trimethicone, provide the heat protection to the product. And so essentially how this works is the dimethicone and the other ingredients, they form a film down the hair fiber. They kind of lubricate and coat the hair fiber essentially. And what happens when you put heat on the hair is the silicone acts as a heat sink and absorbs some of the heat to buffer it from getting on your hair. And it also helps distribute the heat more evenly across the hair fiber. So it prevents more localized damage, let's say. And where the 450 degree Fahrenheit claim comes in is this actually just comes from the claims testing that they did. So when you make a heat protection claim, one of the things that you can do is you take a hair tress, you apply product to it, and then you do many passes down the hair fiber at 450 degrees Fahrenheit. And then you put a comb through the hair and see how much hair breaks over time. And if you can prove that less hair broke from this combing exercise with the product than without the product, then the product would consider to have heat protection. And so marketing is going to say, well, how hot does it protect? Because this is actually a very common question in the salon professional world, like how hot can I go? And so you just look at the number you did the heat testing at, which the industry standard for these testing methodologies is 450 degrees Fahrenheit, and voila, you have some heat protection. Now, oils do this to some effect as well, like plant oils, but that's not the case here. Plant oils also have like a pretty low smoke point, so they're going to start to smoke off of the hair, which is why we don't use more plant oils in this type of application, but it's definitely the dimethicone and more definitely the phenyl trimethicone that they used.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay, the next question she had was about her smoothing oil. Garnier smoothing oil seems to rely on silicones for the silky smoothing effect. I've noticed that it works well on my hair, but very inconsistently, and sometimes it starts to feel tacky or like it's not really penetrating my hair because it's still frizzy. Does this mean I have to use a clarifying shampoo to remove the buildup so that it works again? If so, how often? I have pretty high porosity, wavy hair, so thank you, and hello to all the kittens. All right, so she's still frizzy, but she's using this oil. What's going on here?
Well, this oil is very different from the Olaplex product. The Olaplex product, I would say is pretty substantive to the hair. The Garnier product is more of a cyclic silicone type product. So cyclic silicones are basically silicones that have a circle structure. Examples are cyclopentasiloxane, cyclotetrasiloxane. And so basically these silicones that have circles, they can kind of bounce into the air and evaporate off the hair.
Evaporate off, yeah.
And then you're left with the dimethiconol, the fragrance, the argan oil, the apricot kernel oil, and the product has carrot oil and beta carotene or whatever in it, presumably to color it. So you're pretty much left with stuff on the hair fiber. And in this product, I'm not sure why your hair still appears frizzy because cyclopentasiloxane and dimethiconol can help reduce frizz. Maybe it has to do with how much was distributed on your hair. Maybe it has to do with ambient humidity because if the product's not evenly coated on your hair and there's some water exchange in the air to your hair, or maybe your bathroom was extra humid, maybe it's temperature related, you may get some differences. Maybe It has to do with like how clean your hair was. But none of this stuff should like build up on your hair long term. Dimethicanol and these oils pretty much wash off of your hair with the next shampoo.
I think the fact that the cyclic silicone is evaporating off, that could actually have an impact on the perceived frizz. So over time, you know, the silicone's gone, that one anyway, and so water can sort of absorb unevenly in your hair, and that can kind of cause the frizz.
Exactly.
Now, you would think the dimethicanol might be enough, but if you got the cyclomethicone and the dimethicone sort of blended together, there's going to be holes in there when the cyclomethicone goes off.
Well, I've worked on products like this, and the trick is not to only use volatile things because then they go away. You have to also use things that stay on the hair, but not so much that the hair looks greasy. So it could just be, you know, not the greatest formula.
It's a tricky balance.
All right. Our next question is from Stacy. I'm new to the podcast, but so far I love it. There's so much information out there, and it's nice to hear from people that actually have science to back up things they say. I'm turning 30 this year and barely started getting into skincare over the past year. Horrible, I know, but better late than never, right? Many people recommend very pricey products, and I just can't justify spending nearly $100 for one product. The most expensive product I've ever owned was maybe $30. Are pricier products really more effective and worth the cost, or will my lower cost items still get the job done? Are there certain types of products like moisturizer, eye cream, serum that I should splurge on rather than going the cheaper route? Thanks for any advice you can give, Stacy.
Well, wait a second. So she says it's horrible that she hasn't taken care of her skin until she's 30. Now,
I mean, that's pretty bad.
I mean, I'm 55. When do I start taking care of my skin?
Well, I feel like men are different because they have like a different amount of sebum production on their skin. They don't have this hormone fluctuation. I don't think they're laughing and having as much fun as women are. So like, you know, they don't get these fine lines.
Oh, sure. And, you know, and they also have that part where many of them just don't care as much.
Yeah, you don't care. Yeah.
I'm not going to say I'm indicative of all men, but I think, you know, there are a lot more basic Bobs than there are basic Bettys.
Yeah, Mr. Cosmetic Chemist is a basic Bob. And but what's funny is he's always like complaining about my products in the shower.
That they're too many, or that he doesn't like how they work?
Well, that they're too many. And honestly, he didn't really care how the products worked until he grew his hair out. And then he tried Beyonce's Sacred line, and he was like, this stuff is disgusting. It's like putting oatmeal on your hair. And now he's been using the Augustinus Bader products I had to buy for something. And, you know, he doesn't mind those, but he complains that I'll say, oh my gosh, look, we finished a product and we can get it out of the shower. And he says, it doesn't matter because when one goes away, 5 more show up.
They're like tribbles.
I have a stock. Anyway, Stacey, don't beat yourself up that you didn't take care of your skin. The important thing is you're starting now.
I will say that the one big part of taking care of your skin under 30 is don't get sunburn, because that sunburn, that can impact your skin decades down the line, right?
But I think when you're younger, what you're really looking for is prevention. You don't need all these creams and serums and stuff. No. You just need to protect your skin from the sun because that's what does the most damage over time.
Right. So as long as you were doing that, and, you know, if you had acne or something and you use products for that, you know, that's like spot treatments and things. I don't think there's much you need to do, well, before 30 and still have good-looking skin.
Yeah, mostly I just did skin protection myself. I've been wearing SPF for a long time, staying out of the sun, not moving my face, all those kinds of things. And not smoking. I think smoking is another...
Well, yeah, don't smoke. But so not moving your face, so it was like you got resting bitch face or something? Like
well, a lot of people, when they go out in the sun, even when they wear sunglasses, they squint and you know, squeeze their eyes together, like crunch their face up. And you cannot do that because that's how you get lots of fine lines and wrinkles between your eyebrows and around your eyes.
Like you specifically train yourself not to do that?
Yeah, all you have to do is just kind of lower your eyelids and don't scrunch the rest of your face up. I taught everyone in the lab how to do it because they were like, wow, you look so young. And I'm like, don't scrunch your face in the sun.
Wow, it is so hard to be a girl.
Anyway, okay, Stacey. So what matters is you're starting now. And I think that's really great. people get so wrapped up in buying these high-end products, and the reality is some of them are very good and some of them are okay and some of them are not good. The most important thing you can do for yourself, and I've preached this before, is to get a routine. If you can be dedicated with cleansing your face once a week, exfoliating very lightly to remove dead skin buildup, moisturizing, and wearing SPF during the day, that's all you need. It kind of doesn't really matter what you use. I mean, yeah, that's the fun part. You can play around and add a serum. If you want an eye cream, you can add an eye cream, but they're not really necessary. And I think if you can just do a basic routine, that's like 80% of the battle, and you're going to see a big improvement in the texture, quality, and tone of your skin.
Yeah, and just because a product is sold in a drugstore or at a Target or something doesn't mean it's inferior to something you can only get at Sephora or something. It just price in this business, price and performance are not necessarily linked.
Exactly.
Okay, we have one last question. It comes to us from Valerio.
I think it's Valerio. Valerio, really?
Well, it's like Valerie, but instead of the E at the end, it's O. So
I can see that,
Valerio.
but I think it's Valerio from Italia.
In fact, they are from Italy. So here's the question. Hi, dynamic duo. You're the best. I'm Valerio from Italy. My dream is to be a cosmetic chemist.
Aww.
I know. Now I want to know about Brazilian nanoplasty, about its chemistry and the damages that it creates on hair and how it works on the hair. Thank you. Now, when I first heard nanoplasty, I'm like, I don't think we talk about nose jobs or cosmetic surgery here, right?
Well, that would be rhinoplasty, like a rhinoceros. But when we first talked about this in the episode, I think 333 or something like that, I also thought this was like some kind of cosmetic surgery for your hair. And I was like, what, a haircut?
Right. No. Okay, nanoplasty is a hair treatment that straightens and smooths the hair while technically restoring the health, they say, from the inside out. Unlike the old traditional keratin treatments, nanoplasty uses a formula that has like a bunch of natural stuff like amino acids, collagen, organic acids, linseed oil, etc. And they claim that these nutrients can penetrate the hair at the cellular level, as if hair fiber has cells, but they said at the cellular level, strengthening it, adding shine, and leaving it silky. So they really push the safety of this process, saying that it's free of, formaldehyde or irritants, and it's even safe enough for kids and pregnant women.
Wow.
Yeah, they say it avoids the strong smells and irritation associated with keratin treatments, and the treatment can last from 4 to 8 months with natural hair movement. So, yeah.
This sounds like a bunch of marketing stuff to me. And the fact that they're using the word nano implies to me that they're using some kind of nanotechnology or nanomaterials, which is just, by the way, not really cool in products. I think that's hard to get past toxicological review.
Right.
And the fact that it's like repairing and healing from the inside out, and then it's, it just, that's all marketing fluff to me. This is basically a straightening product, and they're trying to put a new spin on it that separates it a little bit. And the use of the word plasty elevates it to this like surgery, doctor, like kind of permanent change, like, wow, this is a procedure I'm investing in. It gives it that sort of vibe, and it's all just marketing. It's not really science.
No, there's not a lot of science to explain. Now, the way that a keratin treatment works is typically you're going to have a formaldehyde group, which can cause a chemical reaction between the keratin in the product and the hair proteins on your hair, and that's what makes it stick. Now, I'm looking at this product. They have to have something in here that's going to make the amino acids stick onto the hair. Maybe they're able to get a chemical reaction with the heat and whatever else is in there, and the amino acids or the collagen to get that stick in the hair. But I'm not really seeing it here.
No, I'm not sold. And if this costs like way more money than another type of straightening treatment that's also formaldehyde free, by the way, there's a bunch that are really great out there, then I probably wouldn't spend the money on it. If it were on par, I would probably give it a try, but I would still be skeptical about the superiorness or superiority. What's the word when it's more superior?
Superiority?
Yes. All right. I was a chemistry major, not an English major.
You were never in a sorority?
Superiority. Oh my gosh. Well, anyway, I'm just a little skeptical, as Perry would say, that this is like the next greatest thing. It just looks like a lot of hair marketing mumbo jumbo.
The challenge here, whenever you're innovating, you always have to come up with some new product, but technology doesn't change that much. So when technology doesn't change and you need to come out with a new product, the only thing you can do is come up with a new story. And this seems to me like the same a twist on the current technology with a new story.
And the reality is, Perry, the way it talks about the treatment, when you look at the different websites of people and product lines that offer this nanoplasty, they talk about it being safer for the hair, better for the hair, like it's a more holistic approach for the hair. And
yeah, they say you can straighten it and heal it simultaneously, which
exactly. And the reality is, when you have a product like this, you have to get the hair really open, swollen. You have to use a lot of heat to activate the technology to realign the bonds within the hair. And heat is extremely damaging. And so the only thing I would use caution is, if you're going to explore this treatment for your hair, is that it is damaging. So even though your hair looks smoother, healthier, shinier, it has undergone a significant amount of damage during the treatment.
And speaking of damage, I hear the music.
Well, thanks for listening, everyone, to our first episode of the new year. We're already on a good start.
Yeah. And if you get a chance and you go over to Apple Podcasts, please leave us a review. That's going to help other people find the show and ensure we have a full docket of beauty questions to answer. We also will take Spotify reviews, too, and we respond to comments there. Incidentally, if you do have a question, just record it on your smartphone and email it to thebeautybrains@gmail.com, or you can just use the form that I put in the show notes.
The Beauty Brains are also on Patreon. As Perry mentioned earlier, we are an ad-free podcast, and I think we're actually the only ad-free beauty podcast online, and we are the longest-running beauty podcast online as well. Nonetheless, we don't want to have annoying ads on the show because...
I think we're the farthest-running one, too, because, I run at least 1,200 miles a year.
Wow, and I don't run at all, so Perry's pulling all the weight there. Regardless, we need your help because there are basic costs with supporting the show. So if you want to contribute at any level, we're so appreciative. Head over to patreon.com/thebeautybrains and subscribe.
And you get a transcript of the show, and you also get your questions a higher priority than any other ones we get.
Also, don't forget to follow us on our various social media accounts. On Instagram, we're at The Beauty Brains 2018. On X, we're at The Beauty Brains. On Blue Sky, we're at The Beauty Brains. We have a Facebook page and a TikTok.
For now, until the Supreme Court bans it.
Maybe not. Well, thanks again for listening, everyone. And remember, be brainy about your beauty.
Thanks, everyone. Kittens.
Question every time. Beauty brains, we're breaking it down. Chemistry truths and industry sounds. From self-tanners to nanoplasty. It's more than a glow, it's reality. Beauty brains with every refrain. Science over hype, let knowledge reign. Nanoplasty claims it can heal your hair. Heat and collagen, science or flair. Luxury serums versus budget creams. Which one delivers on its gleam? Eliza's eyes and Sean's PFAS fears. Stacy's search for skincare's frontier. From Italy to El Paso's glow. The Beauty Brains reveal what you should know. What's in your bottle, your jar, your cream? Is it safety, value, or just a dream? Listen up, Valerio, here's the key. Always question the chemistry. Beauty brains, we're breaking it down. Chemistry truths and industry sounds. From self-tanners to nanoplastics. more than a glow, it's reality. Beauty prays with every refrain. Science over hype, let knowledge reign.